Welcome, it is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel as we try to build this thing up. It's a big one on Sunday. Lambeau Field, Fox's game of the week. Packers welcome in the San Francisco 49ers. We have our final thoughts leading into the matchup today. And let's not mistake this. Let's not try to bury the lead or sweep it under the rug. This is a playoff game for San Francisco. That's sort of the feel that the 49ers are going to have to approach this game with, that it is a playoff game. You can say, well, it's week 12. Why would that be the case? San Francisco is struggling. 49ers right now are 5-5. The Arizona Cardinals lead the division at 6-4, and you can sit back and say, well, that's not going to hold serve. Like, Arizona's not going to hold that thing down the whole way. Well, Seattle's also 5-5. I believe the Rams are also 5-5. So there's a logjam. But right now, Arizona leads the division at 6-4. And you can sit there and say, well, San Francisco will flip the switch. They'll figure it out. I've been waiting for them to do that the last 3-4 weeks, and every time I think they're in a spot where they are going to turn the tide and start to figure it out, they lose. And you look at Arizona's schedule, that's the big kicker within all of this. You can sit back and say there's too much talent with the 49ers. The Cardinals are a year or two ahead of schedule. They'll falter. San Francisco will rise to the top. They'll win the NFC West. They might. They very well could. But right now, Arizona's a game up on San Francisco, and they beat the 49ers in San Francisco in their only matchup so far this year. They also play in Week 18 to close out the regular season. But Arizona still gets Carolina, New England, Seattle twice, and the LA Rams. Meanwhile, San Francisco's at Green Bay this weekend. Then they go to Buffalo. Later on down the road, they have a date with Detroit. How do you feel about those games? Like, I'm looking at San Francisco's schedule, and I'm saying if it's the same San Francisco we've seen 10 games in, they win 9, maybe 10 games at most, 10 at most. And then I look at Arizona, who already has 6 in the bag, and I see Carolina, New England, Seattle twice, LA. That's where you start to do the math, and it's like, this is a big, big game for San Francisco on Sunday. And not just because it's the Packers and it's on the road. It's for their season to really have a pulse as they keep moving forward. You fall to 5-6, and Arizona beats Seattle and moves to 7-4, and Arizona's got 1 in the bag against you already. That'd be even more tough sledding for the 49ers moving forward. So to me, this, like, Green Bay in theory should get San Francisco's best swing on Sunday, and they got to be ready for it. And the math really backs this up. If you look at the magnitude of this game, really for both teams too. For Green Bay, it's a big one. According to Next Gen Stats' playoff model, as things currently sit, folks, the San Francisco 49ers have a 31% chance to make the playoffs. Who thought we'd be saying that 10 games in? The 49ers have a 31% chance to make the playoffs as of this very moment. A win over Green Bay on Sunday, and that number jumps to 49%. A loss, and it dips to 18%. Again, San Francisco currently has a 31% chance to make the playoffs, according to the model from Next Gen Stats. A win on Sunday, 49%. A loss, it dips to 18%. Green Bay currently is at 81% chance to make the playoffs. A win, and it bumps up to 92%. A loss, you're still looking okay. It would drop them to 68%. Green Bay, to me, in this game, has a chance to shower some dirt on the gravesite of the boogeyman, of its boogeyman. I wouldn't say the boogeyman of the league, but Green Bay's boogeyman of the last, 10, 11, 12 years? Like, that is what San Francisco has been to Green Bay, especially in the postseason over the last decade plus. They have been Green Bay's boogeyman. Don't undersell it. Don't underplay it. This is a massive, massive game on Sunday, primarily for the San Francisco 49ers. A lot of talk generating around the injury front for Kyle Shanahan's squad in this game, in the lead up to it against the Packers. Nick Bosa's oblique hip injuries, if it's plural, cannot go unstated. It absolutely cannot. The injury to Nick Bosa is a huge dark cloud lingering over the heads of San Francisco in preparation for this game Sunday. He spoke to reporters on Wednesday. I think he said he could see himself out there. He could not see himself out there. Just has to see how it goes. Wouldn't expect him to practice much, if at all, this week. He didn't last week and then played against Seattle, but he tweaked his injury against the Seahawks and sat out the last couple of drives, missed sometimes sporadically throughout the game as well. If Nick Bosa does not play on Sunday, it is a huge pendulum swing in favor and in the direction of the Green Bay Packers. Nick Bosa, I could sit here and say the line and not back it up. Like, Nick Bosa is a one-man wrecking crew. And I can throw that line out there, and most people would probably just nod along and be like, yeah, Nick Bosa is pretty damn good. Yeah, he is a one-man wrecking crew. But when you dig deep into it and you look at the numbers and some of the stats, it really, really puts a light on how dominant he is. In that game against the Seahawks last week, think about this, and I'm not going to drown you in too many numbers, but consider these. When Nick Bosa was on the field against the Seahawks last week, Seattle averaged 3.3 yards per play, scored 0 touchdowns, and allowed 3 sacks, 1.5 of which were credited to Bosa. So again, Bosa's on the field last week against the Seahawks, 3.3 yards per play, 0 touchdowns, 3 sacks allowed. When Nick Bosa was off the field and on the sidelines, Seattle went from 3.3 yards per play to 6.1. They scored 2 touchdowns with Nick Bosa off the field and allowed just 1 sack of Geno Smith. That is a one-man wrecking crew to the purest form. That's what Nick Bosa is. Matt LaFleur said Wednesday Bosa changes a game because there are some plays, in LaFleur's own words, he said, there are some plays you wouldn't call with him on the field. One guy on the defensive front. That's how good Nick Bosa is. That's how huge this injury, kind of the unknown with it, whether or not he's going to play or not on Sunday. And hell, if he's out there on Sundays, he can't imagine he's going to be anything close to 100%. And I know you can say, hey, it's week 12 of the NFL. Who is at 100%? Like, nobody is. I get that. But if Bosa's even at like 50, 55%, if that would feel like a win for Green Bay. And, we're not rooting for injuries here, but that's the reality that San Francisco's dealing with. Its biggest game wrecker on the defensive side. Like, Fred Warner is the brains of the operation on that defense, but Nick Bosa is a one-man wrecking crew to the truest form. If he's not out there Sunday, it's a huge, huge blow for San Francisco. Brock Purdy injured his throwing shoulder against Seattle. I'd be shocked if he didn't play. Unsure of how much it's going to affect him against Green Bay. But again, Shanahan said after the game Sunday, he's day-to-day. I just, based off the wording, what's being said, the attention being paid to the injury for Brock Purdy, would be shocked if he's not out there Sunday. But again, don't know the severity level as to how much it's going to affect him with an injured throwing shoulder against Green Bay. And then George Kittle was a limited participant last week, but didn't play against Seattle. He said Wednesday at his locker he's playing. He said he's playing against Green Bay Sunday. He's not missing the game. He's going to play against the Packers. So I know it kind of stinks, right, talking about injuries right off the get-go, but that big one is it's Nick Bosa. It really is. He can change a game quickly, and he's done it so many times for the San Francisco defense. So keep tabs on sort of the practice reports if you want throughout the week, but I think they'll probably DNP him all week and then just see if he can give it a go on Sunday. That would be my best guess at this moment. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Final thoughts, Packers 49ers Sunday at Lambeau Field. Fox's game of the week, a 3:25 p.m. kickoff. Big one for both sides. I'm not going to say it's bigger for San Francisco, but in terms of playoff odds and percentages and chances to get a ticket to the dance, San Francisco really, really needs this one. Like, a loss would suck for Green Bay, but it wouldn't be like a death blow to its postseason chances. For San Francisco, it'd be a major hit. I told you if they win on Sunday, they have a 49% chance to make the playoffs. If they lose, it drops to 18%. So we'll have to see. Other side of the ball, I think the key in this game, obviously Nick Bosa's a key, and he's a superstar all-pro player, but if you want to circle one thing in this game, and it's really been the kryptonite for the Packers whenever they face the 49ers, it's the San Francisco run game. That's the one thing I'm really honing in on, that we know, like, whoever is on the field, not on the field, who's ever in, out of the lineup, San Francisco is going to try to set up the run to open up the pass. just how they work things with Kyle Shanahan's system, very similar to what Green Bay typically likes to do as well. The running game for the 49ers, it's the engine. It's the engine for San Francisco's offense. It keeps everything else moving swimmingly when it's working and when it's effective. So far this year, though, and I know they were missing CMC, but if you take out who was running the ball for San Francisco and you just look at the big boys up front who are in charge of paving holes in the ground game, it hasn't really been a typical San Francisco success story in doing so, in paving holes in the ground game, at least so far through 10 games. There are some interesting numbers that circulate around this and sort of back it up. The 49ers, again, according to ESPN Analytics and Next Gen Stats, the 49ers are 26th in run block win rate, while the Packers are 13th in run stop win rate. So not nearly in the same section as the pass rate for Green Bay. Like, I saw Brock Purdy had the injured throwing shoulder and still expecting to be out there Sunday, but there might be some uncomfortability for him. And typically I would say, man, let's tee up some blitzes, get some pressure on Purdy, really, really try to make him uncomfortable, not injure him further, but let's make him uncomfortable. Let's see how he's doing and figure that out. But with Green Bay's pass rush, it's almost like, why even bring it up? Why even say it when you know it's probably not going to come to fruition? Like, the pass rush has been so bad and so porous for Green Bay. It really pisses me off even bringing it up right now. But the pass rush has not leaked into Green Bay's ability to stop the run. I think they've kind of been middle of the pack, but they've been good at times in stopping the run. They've been really, really good at not allowing mobile quarterbacks to beat them with their legs, outside of Caleb Williams, who had 70 yards last week. A lot of read options, some duck and cover runs for Williams when nothing was open down the field. But in large part, Green Bay's been really good at stopping mobile quarterbacks from beating them with their legs. Purdy, I think he had like 40 or 50 last week against Seattle, but really the focus here is on CMC in the running back group that San Francisco brings to the table. And you see, again, 26th in run block win rate is not typical for a 49ers offensive line. I watched 5 or 6 of their offensive series from last week against Seattle. CMC had 19 totes for 79 yards against the Seahawks, but man, a lot of those were like runs where he really had to work for some yardage. And so a lot of Packer fans are going to get like PTSD, the Colin Kaepernick playoff game. McCaffrey last year was somewhat bundled up in the playoffs but against Green Bay, but he had a huge 50-yard run in there. And you go back to like the years with Frank Gore in the backfield for San Francisco running all over Packers defenses. And so I could throw out the number that like, hey, San Francisco's offensive line has not done a real great job of creating holes for the running game this year. But there's something that you just know when they see Packers on the schedule. It doesn't matter who's on that defensive line for Green Bay, who's at linebacker, who's running the show at defensive coordinator. San Francisco probably mentally is going to believe it has an advantage against Green Bay in the ground game. Although it's struggled at times so far this season. So I'd love to sit here and tell you the numbers suggest Green Bay can hold its own against the running game of Kyle Shanahan, but it's one of those things where it's like, let's slow the pace a little bit, because I hate saying it, but we have seen this movie before, and we freaking hate the ending. And in the playoffs, it has circulated, again, in the last decade plus, around San Francisco running it down the throats of the Green Bay Packers. What was the playoff game? Was it an NFC championship in Matt LaFleur's first year? I might be mistaken. It might have been I think it was his first year. Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback for San Francisco. Didn't they throw like 11 times total or 12 times total? It was something crazy. They had so much success running it at Green Bay at will. San Francisco knew they were going to run. Green Bay knew they were going to run. The crowd knew they were going to run. Everyone watching on TV knew they were going to run. 49ers still ran it at will against Green Bay. I think that was LaFleur's first year, and that was one of those embarrassing ones where it was like Jimmy G only attempted 11, 12 passes, somewhere around there, because of how good they didn't need to stop running. And so I think, at least on paper and on tape, with the eyeball test too, this is a different San Francisco group as far as like they want to do the same stuff, but they haven't had as much success as we've become accustomed to seeing. But I feel like when they see Green Bay pop up on the schedule, it makes the hair on their arms go up, because they realize like, oh, we have feasted against this team with our running offense for so many years now. Again, primarily in the postseason. So I'd love to sit here and tell you I have all the faith in the world that Jeff Hafley's group's going to slow down the run game and that San Francisco is 26th in run block win rate, which is not good. But I think for this matchup, you throw it out the window and you just say your prayers. And I hate phrasing it that way for you, but that's what we've become accustomed to seeing. Like, until it changes and Green Bay does, get it swung in their favor against San Francisco at least a couple of times in a row, it's hard to buy into the notion that it's going to happen and it's going to start this week and San Francisco's ground game is going to be clogged up by the run defense from Green Bay. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Mitch, I'm on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Packers 49ers Sunday at Lambeau Field. Back to the other side of the ball too. Nick Bosa with the injury. There's so many tentacles, angles with it. The replacements they have for Bosa, it's not even a knock on them. It's not Nick Bosa. And that's all you really need to say. And I went back and looked at some of the numbers from last year in the playoff game where the offensive line did a pretty good job for Green Bay against San Francisco. So Jordan Love was not sacked against the 49ers in that playoff game a year ago in Santa Clara. But Nick Bosa had 5 quarterback hits against Jordan Love. Like, Nick Bosa smacked Jordan Love 5 times, which is just an insane number. Like, if anyone up front for Green Bay could get 5 quarterback pressures in a game, I'm not talking sacks or hits. If they could get 5 quarterback pressures, I'd be elated. I'd rejoice. Hallelujah. They can't even do that. As a team, they struggle to get 5 pressures. Nick Bosa, not pressures, had 5 hits of Jordan Love in the divisional round game in Santa Clara last year. I love this Green Bay offensive line. The numbers would back it up that they've been very, very, very good in pass protection. Nick Bosa is a different animal. I know I sound like a broken record, but so much of Sunday when Green Bay has the ball could be dictated. You heard it from Matt LaFleur's mouth. There's plays you can't run when he's on the field. So much is going to depend on the availability of San Francisco's star pass rusher. Regardless, though, like for Green Bay when they have the ball, I'd like to say, like, limit the penalties. Limit the penalties. Let's have one game without an interception. How about that? Love had 2. Love had 2 in the playoff game last year against San Francisco, the one on the final drive to end it when Green Bay was going to attempt to try to get into field goal range to send it to overtime. Wouldn't have needed to attempt to get into field goal range for a game-tying field goal. Could have tried for a game-winning field goal, but Anders Carlson decided to miss a 41-yarder from the left hash to put Green Bay up a touchdown with, 6 minutes left. Decided it wasn't a good idea to make that 41-yarder, but I digress. This game, limit the penalties. Let's go one game without an interception. We're so used to seeing Green Bay just like win the turnover battle throughout the years. And it hasn't been the case at times this season. And a lot of that is the interceptions of Jordan Love. What does he have, 11 now this year? And he's missed 2.5 games. He missed 2 full games in the most of the second half against Jacksonville, and he still has 11 interceptions in 7.5 games. That's not good. It's just not. It's gotta change. And the one last week I said wasn't a dumb interception against Chicago. It was just a terrible throw, and he'd be the first one to tell you that. I did like that Jordan Love at his locker on Wednesday said he went back and rewatched this offseason, the playoff game against San Francisco 3 times because he wanted to remember, this is the team that knocked us out. So San Francisco has the juice on Sunday because their season, quite frankly, is somewhat on the line Sunday against Green Bay. It truly is. 5-6, 6-5, based off how the NFC West is looking and how the wild card race is taking shape in the NFC. This is massive for San Francisco. For Green Bay, you have a chance to get back at your boogeyman and to really, really deliver what could be. It's not technically or mathematically going to be the final nail in the coffin, but San Francisco loses this one. They're 5-6 going to Buffalo. It's going to be real tough then for the 49ers. So limit the penalties. Let's go a game without an interception. If Green Bay can do those 2 things, I feel good about its chances. I really do. And there is one weird thing about this matchup. I remember the regular season game in week 3, was it 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago? Packers down late, 28-27, I want to say. Rodgers throws just 2 beauties, back-to-back dots to Devontae Adams, gets the Packers in field goal range. Crosby drains a 50-yarder as time expires. Green Bay wins 30-28. They move to 2-1 on the season. I bring that up because even in that matchup, week 3, 4 years ago, was it? 3-4 years ago, something like that. Even in that matchup going into it, I felt like San Francisco was the better team. San Francisco has ended Green Bay's seasons too many times in the last 10 plus years in the postseason, but Green Bay's gotten some licks in during the regular season. But even most of those matchups going into it, I have always thought like San Francisco is just the better team, whether it's right now in the moment or for the long run. I've gone into so many of those matchups thinking San Francisco is the better team. Ironically enough, the playoff loss a few years ago, 13-10, the blocked punt for a touchdown late in the fourth quarter, and then San Francisco walks it off on a Robbie Gould field goal. That was a true matchup where I went into it thinking, I think Green Bay might have the edge here. I think they're the better team. And at a snowy Lambeau Field, they still found a way to lose. This matchup, I don't know how much you guys have watched San Francisco this year. The Packers just feel like the better team. Green Bay has its flaws, and I've brought them up over and over again because we're all frustrated by it. The dumb penalties, the interceptions, the drop passes, the lack of a pass rush. Every team's flawed in some capacity. Detroit has its issues. Kansas City has its issues. No one's flawless. The ones with Green Bay are so frustrating, though, because you think it can be coached out of them. The dumb penalties are just hey, pay attention more, and we'll get rid of some of these things. I feel like Green Bay's just the better team. I do. I've watched San Francisco enough this year. I was stunned when they lost to Minnesota early in the year, and Minnesota kind of took it to them early in that game, and I was like, holy shit, is Minnesota for real? And because I just assumed, of course San Francisco's for real, they're probably going to be the favorite to win the NFC again, and entering that game, they probably were. And I was even looking at odds after their loss to Seattle. San Francisco still had better odds to win the NFC than Green Bay. Green Bay's 7-3, looking like, unless something disastrous happens, Green Bay should be at minimum a playoff team. San Francisco right now, you cannot say that in the slightest. Oh yeah, at minimum they should be a playoff team. San Francisco's fighting for its life, and yet they still have better odds to win the NFC than Green Bay. But I look at this matchup, and it is the first time in a long time that I genuinely feel like the Packers are just better than San Francisco. The odds for this game reflect it, although slightly. Last I looked, Vegas had Green Bay as a 2.5-point favorite. I haven't felt this way about a Packers-49ers matchup in years, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're rolling your eyes and saying I'm an idiot. That's fine, and your point might be proven on Sunday. Maybe San Francisco comes out and delivers 3-4 jabs early and then a knockout punch in the second half. Who knows? I think for me this time around, it's less about Green Bay and more about San Francisco. Even in years past, the Rodgers MVP years and those first couple under LaFleur, when they played San Francisco, I always just thought San Francisco's a well-oiled machine. They're so damn good. And this time around, I think Green Bay's a pretty good team. I don't know if San Francisco is. I don't. I've seen them enough this year where it's been such a weird year for the 49ers. Every time I've thought, okay, they're going to kick it into gear. They don't. And they end up losing. San Francisco started the season slow. They were 2-2 entering week 5. They welcomed in Arizona to their home in Santa Clara and lost to the Cardinals. And then San Francisco got back to 3-3. They were coming off a win. They were welcoming in Kansas City. They had extra days to prepare because San Francisco was coming off a Thursday night win against Seattle. So they had 3-ish extra days to prepare for Kansas City at home, welcome them into Santa Clara. And I know the Chiefs are a different beast, but I still thought sitting at 3-3, extra time to prepare, rest, all that good stuff. I was like, 49ers, yeah, they can beat the Chiefs. And they lost. And then last week was the real, I don't want to say stunner, but the one that really put it into perspective for me, where it was they're 5-4 coming off a win. They've beaten the crap out of Seattle so many times since Geno Smith took over as a starting quarterback, and it's not a Geno problem. I like Geno Smith. It's just San Francisco's got their number, just like they have had Green Bay's in the postseason. I just couldn't, even with some of the injuries, I couldn't fathom picking against San Francisco last week. I thought 5-4, here we go. They have Seattle at home. They're about to kick it into gear, and they lost to the Seahawks, and they're 5-5. And so I'm sitting back wondering, there's a very clear pattern here with San Francisco where every time I think, They're about to get back on track at home with a win, start stacking them up. They don't, and they lose at home. And maybe that's just who they are this year. And I feel like, I haven't said it in one of these matchups for a while, Green Bay to me is just the better team entering Sunday. Now, if Green Bay's issues, shooting themselves in the foot with penalties, turnovers, drop passes, get in the way, San Francisco's way too good to do that against repeatedly. But if Green Bay plays its game and San Francisco plays, if Green Bay plays, its A-B+ game and San Francisco plays its A-B+ game, I just think Green Bay's better this year. I do. So we'll have to see. Should be a fascinating one, though. It'll be a San Francisco has to treat this as a playoff game. They do. Point blank, matter of fact. It is Mitch. I'm on YouTube. Always appreciate all the support. We'll have another video before the end of the week. Subscribe. Click that button. We'll see you next time.